radical Islam. Last spring, the world watched on television as Islamic young people set Paris on fire night after night. Islamics did not move to France to become French. They intended to move to France to get France to submit to Islam. 20% of France is now Islamic. They marched down Main Street screaming and chanting in unison, "Death to the Jews." Russia and China are now supporting Iran. The point I'm making here is that the nations of the world are at war. It was Russian anti-tank rockets that killed 50 Israeli soldiers. Now the serpent's head of global Islamic terrorism is Iran. The former Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, said in my office and told me, 3 years ago, he said in my office and told me, that when he was the Prime Minister, he went to the President of the United States and said Russian scientists are in Iran, helping Iran develop medium-range missiles that can reach London, Jerusalem, and the north and the eastern coast of the United States of America. Our government did not believe it. Whenever Mr. Netanyahu gave to our government photographic proof given to him by the Mossad, then they believed it and were shocked. Can you think of the global impact of 3 missiles from Iran with nuclear warheads now that they're working to get, hitting Jerusalem, London, and New York? It's very possible. And I assure you that they will try it unless they are stopped. If you think that's impossible, the president of Iran vowed recently, and I quote, "We shall soon experience a world without the United States and without Zionism." Then he said Israel should be blown off the map. Israel has just finished a 34-day war with Iran. How and when did this war start? Iran gave Syria 14,000 missiles and $100 million. Those missiles were given to Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization. Hezbollah, if you can believe it, means the party of God. In Lebanon, they used those missiles to give missile fire as they invaded Israel. And they kidnapped 2 Israeli soldiers, and they killed 8 others. That's an act of war. Why did Iran start this war on July 12th? They started the war because the G8 nations were meeting to discuss Iran's nuclear threat. Iran wanted to avoid world attention to their nuclear threat, so they started a war with Israel through Syria via the Hezbollah. Please understand this. What's happening with Hezbollah is nothing more than Iran's long arm reaching down into the Middle East. What's happening in Iraq is nothing but Iran's long arm reaching out to stick its finger in the eye of the United States of America. We as a nation are at war against a determined enemy. It is time for Americans to recognize that we must win this war at all costs. When Iran wanted to avoid world attention, they started the war with Israel. The world media instantly covered the war 24/7, and soon were blaming Israel for being too aggressive. I assure you, if your son had been kidnapped, you would want this nation to be as aggressive as possible in getting your son back. Therefore, I have no apologies to offer for Israel for being aggressive. God bless them for their willingness to defend their life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's going on beyond this? America's leaders try to comfort us saying Iran can't possibly have nuclear weapons. That's absolutely wrong. If they haven't already produced them, North Korea does have them. North Korea has nuclear missiles. They fired them on July the 4th, our day of independence, on purpose to get our nation's attention at Japan to parade its nuclear power in the face of America. Iran is swimming in oil money that came from your gas tank. They can now buy nuclear rockets from North Korea any day of the week. Continue with the validation that the world is at war with radical Islam. America, England, France, Israel. Recently, Islamic terrorists were arrested in Canada with 3 times the explosives used on the Murray building in Oklahoma City. Their objective? To capture the Canadian Prime Minister and cut his head off. I ask you, is that a friendly foe? This is an act of war. Spain is at war with radical Islam. Bombs explode on 3 commuter trains in Madrid, March the 11th in 2004, killing 201 and injuring 1,400. Islamic leaders told Spain to take their troops out of Iraq. Spain bowed to the demand of radical Islam. Therefore, Spain is finished as an independent nation. Throw in the Islamic attacks in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, Kuwait, Philippines, Egypt, Turkey, Bangladesh, and Thailand. Ladies and gentlemen of America, the Third World War has started. People say, well, where is the army? The army is not coming. The army is here. And they're waiting to respond as terrorist cells against the nation. It is time for this country to recognize that there is a war between Islamofascism and freedom, a war between the culture of death and the culture of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is a war we must win, period. What is going to happen in the Middle East? Just this past week, I had supper with Ambassador Ross, who has spent his whole life negotiating with the Middle East. And he has said that Syria has insisted that its border not be patrolled by NATO. And he said he knows that at this very moment, weapons are being resupplied to Hezbollah. Not only resupplied to Hezbollah, but massive weapons are being brought into Gaza. Everything that can be brought. When Israel sees this, Israel has no choice but to respond. Therefore, very likely, Israel will be the aggressor on the next time around. Then you will watch Russia give military leadership to the Islamic armies to attack Israel. And the war of Ezekiel 38-39 began, the Gog and Magog war. This is coming sooner than you think. But the shocking fact about the Gog and Magog war of Ezekiel 38-39 is this. It happens 3.5 years after the rapture of the church. You can see the development of the Gog and Magog war now as Russia is giving leadership to the Islamic nations, specifically Iran and Syria. Russia is all over the Middle East in an antagonist position against the United States of America. Our president and our government needs to wake up and smell the coffee. Mr. Putin is not for us. He is against us. When did this Islamic threat begin? Most Americans would say on 9/11. Some would say when the Iranian embassy hostages in 1979 happened in the Carter administration. Beirut, Lebanon Marine Barracks in 1983, when Hezbollah killed 220 U.S. Marines and 22 others who were servicemen from around the world. The first U.S. New York World Trade attack in 1993, some would say that was the beginning. Some would say Tanzania, when the U.S. Embassy in 1998, when Bill Clinton shot rockets into an abandoned terrorist camp. He killed several sand dunes. He frightened some very old camels, trying to get his sexual exploits with Monica Lewinsky off the front pages of the United States of America. It was an ineffectual battle plan because he was an ineffectual president. Some would say this battle began with USS Cole in 2000. Some would say it began on 9/11 with the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. But the fact this clash of civilizations started 1,700 years before Christ was born, when Abraham, the father of all who believed, married 2 women. You don't have to be a social scientist to know that when one man marries 2 women in the same house, there's going to be lots of trouble.